Election season is different for normal people than it is for you and me. I'm sorry, you're not normal. I'm not normal. We are hyper political people. Normal people don't care about all the issues we do. What do normal people care about? Well, why don't we talk to somebody who's gotten elected in a purple state? It is amazing that Ron Johnson keeps getting elected in a purple state because he's one of like 5 good senators we have. He's awesome. Joining me now, Senator Ron Johnson in the state of Wisconsin. Senator, you managed to keep getting elected in a state that is not bloodthirsty red like my state of Texas. You get elected in Wisconsin. Clearly, you're somebody who understands what people care about. What do they care about this year?
Hello, Jesse. Well, first and foremost, what they care about when they're electing somebody or voting for somebody, is that person honest? Is that person genuine? They may not always agree with that individual, but as long as they believe that that person believes what they're actually telling the public, that goes a long way. So I think I've earned the trust of Wisconsinites. I made 2 promises when I first ran for election. I said, I'll always tell you the truth. I'll never vote, and by extension, I won't conduct myself worrying about re-election. And I've honored those promises. So, right now, I think in today's environment, I think that's basically table stakes for the candidates. But in terms of issues, it's the pocketbook issues. It is the open border, which is crowding out housing, which is crowding out education, healthcare, law enforcement. It's flooding our streets with fentanyl and methamphetamine, dangerous drugs killing Americans. People are experiencing this, that they know people who have died from overdoses. And it's the economy. They can't afford things. And hopefully they're connecting the dots as the massive deficit spending that has sparked 40-year high inflation, devalued the dollar from $1 at the start of the Biden administration down to 83 cents. So to me, those are the main issues right there: inflation and the open border.
Inflation doesn't surprise me, although we can get to that in a moment. But the immigration thing, which I've always been super hot on, it does surprise me how national that issue has gotten. I've lived in California and Arizona and Texas, and of course it was always big in those places. But when I lived in Montana, when I lived in Ohio, it really wasn't something that ever came up. You're in Wisconsin. Last time I looked at a map, not a border state, but people in Wisconsin care about this issue now?
Well, again, not a southern border state, but no. Best estimate I have, and it's hard because DHS is not honest with us, they released about 7.8 million people into the country since the start of the Biden administration. That's a number that is larger than the population of 38 states. That's the magnitude of the problem. And although we don't have a huge migrant population here, we do have pockets. 1,000 people in Whitewater, which is a city of 15,000, definitely overwhelmed their law enforcement and education systems. But again, it's the drug trafficking. We used to have a basic drug trafficking hub in Chicago. Now we have multiple hubs in Wisconsin. And again, people see that, they feel that when when one of their sons or daughters die of an overdose, so they know somebody who does. So they definitely are aware of that.
Senator, let's go back to the pocketbook issues you brought up in the very beginning. You mentioned you hope people are making the connection between Washington's spending and inflation. I think people feel inflation and they blame Washington, but maybe specifically they don't know what the cause is. But am I speaking out of turn there? You're the one out there talking to normal people. Do they get that it's every $1 trillion bill and $2 trillion deficit? That's the reason you can't afford eggs anymore?
In one side of the brain, they might acknowledge that, but on the other side of the brain, they love getting free federal money. Of course, it's not free, but everybody loves the earmarks. Tammy Baldwin has brought home close to $750 million worth of earmarks. I don't vote for earmarks. I don't request any, and so that's a pretty popular thing to do. So that's a real problem. The other issues I should mention, because this is on people's radar screen. Again, just these insane social issues. The fact that now biological males are competing with their girls and being forced, or being allowed to shower in their locker rooms and use their bathrooms. The vast majority of Americans believe that is insane. That is crazy. Now it's being normalized by the radical left, by the Democrat Party, by their allies in the media, to the point where, one of these biological males gets named Woman of the Year. This is crazy town. And again, unfortunately, too many of our fellow citizens don't listen to people like you, don't listen to conservative talk radio. They get their They get their news, they get their information from the legacy of the corporate media, which is corrupt, it's biased, and it's basically advocates for the left.
This election that's coming up, obviously we're hopeful, I'm hopeful that it possibly could be, I don't want to get ahead of myself, some sort of a red wave, or it looks like we could have a really, really good election. But if we don't stop spending, it doesn't help that much. We get better border security, but no better spending policies. Unless you tell me the mood is shifting within the walls of the GOP. Do they talk about the fact that the GOP really does spend as much as the Democrats do? Is that discussed at all?
Oh, a few of us point that out to our colleagues who pretty well just shrug and keep spending. So that's why again, I'm a big supporter. I hope you make a lot of noise. We need Rick Scott as our majority leader. Here's a serious individual, very successful person in the private sector, successful governor of Florida. He wants to challenge these issues. I'm not sure the other people running necessarily do. I certainly know that Mitch McConnell could have cared less about excessive spending. I'm hopeful with President Trump, he'll be a one-term president. The fact that he's bringing Elon Musk into the picture, hopefully be part of his administration, efficiencies are. I love what Elon Musk did to Twitter. He fired about 80% of the people in Twitter, and it seems like Twitter is doing just fine. I think we take a look at the federal government, take a look at all these federal employees that have never come back to work. They're still teleworking. Sure they are. We need a top to bottom evaluation of the federal government.
Let's talk a little bit about immigration again, because I'm very worried, as I normally am, about the GOP backing in this. And honestly, I'm worried about Trump. I'm worried about losers like James Lankford, Mitch McConnell, these amnesty-loving Republicans we have. Trump caved last time on child separation. We have to begin deporting people by the million, which is a horrible, ugly process. It's going to involve tears and arrests and all kinds of things that don't look good on television. And you'll have to forgive me, Senator, if I'm worried about the GOP's spine to actually follow through with any of these things.
Oh, I understand. The first step is securing the border. I have no doubt that President Trump wants to secure the border. I have no doubt that we will all be very supportive of deporting, arresting and then deporting criminals. After that, we probably will need some law changes because people in this country now have legal rights, which we as Republicans actually respect the rule of law. So again, it's going to get very messy. That's why I keep saying that the negative impact, the negative consequences of this open border policy, we're going to be dealing with for years, if not decades to come. This is ugly, what President Biden and Kamala Harris have done in this country, and it's not going to be a simple solution. But again, I think we can secure the border, I think, rather quickly. Trump knew how to do it first time. He's going to be hiring some very serious people, hopefully people like Mark Morgan and Tom Homan who know how to do it. And then, we absolutely have to crack down on the criminals. I mean, the fact that Martha Raddatz, on This Week on ABC with J.D. Vance, when he was talking about Venezuelan gangs taking over these apartments, and she kind of fact checks him, Senator, it's only a handful of apartment buildings. I mean, are you? I mean, J.D. Vance had the best comebacks. Martha, are you listening to yourself? You honestly believe that it's okay to have Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment buildings? By the way, Jesse, that's just the tip of the iceberg. When I was chairman of Homeland Security Committee, you go down to Central America, the brutality of those gangs. I mean, we're not used to that kind of criminal activity, the kidnappings, the murders, the rapes, the extortion. You're a police officer, you get a little DVD with videos of your children and wife going to church and to school. That's the minor threats right there. If you're a cab driver, you either pay the extortion or they put a bullet in your head and they set your cab on fire. Then a lot of taxi drivers start paying the extortion. So that's what we have led into this country. We're starting to experience that a little bit with these gangs taking over apartment buildings. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Senator, what's the message to Wisconsin voters in the final days of the election here? What do you want them to hear from you?
Well, it's the age-old question. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And, I know we were in the pandemic, but go back a little bit further before the pandemic recession and take a look at what Donald Trump had delivered as president of the United States. A record economy, wages were growing for every demographic group. Inflation was low, energy prices were low. government regulations have been cut, taxes have been cut. I mean, those are the policies that work. So take a look at actually what worked and vote for those successful policies. Even Kamala Harris wants to turn the page. She's just not realizing Americans want to turn the page on her and her administration. So again, vote your pocketbook. Take a look at who actually has a record and who has nothing but lies and deception, and that's Kamala Harris and the Democrats.
Yeah, she doesn't strike me as a big reader anyway. Senator, thank you so much. I appreciate you, as always. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.